Italians are anxious, but these small openings are signs of big improvements. Especially for families with small kids, the lockdown has been anything but a walk in the park.
It was really terrible. Bye-bye, USA!
Factories producing iconic Italian brands made for export like Ferrari were allowed to open early, but under very strict conditions. Workers are given masks, checked for fever, and even are getting blood tests upon arrival. The results take 8 hours. Epidemiologists here warn that tests like this must be used widely to keep COVID from coming back.
If you start a diet, you need a scale to know if you're losing or gaining weight. This is basically the same thing. We are reopening. We need a scale.
Some Italians like Giulia Rustico aren't taking any chances.
I was supposed to go to the dentist, and I was supposed to go on the 8th, but I just wanted to wait 1 week and see how the situation unfolds.
But she still admires how keeping Italians apart ended up bringing the whole country together.
The whole situation is crazy, and we don't know when it's going to go back to normal, and it's life-changing, you know. But at the same time, I'm pretty proud of my country for how they handled the situation, because everybody just came together.
But we're still waiting for a couple of things to open up, those things that really make Italy feel like Italy. Restaurants, bars, cafes, museums. We're going to have to wait for 2 weeks, until May 18th, for the museums to actually reopen. As for the restaurants and bars and cafes, that's not going to be for nearly another month, until June 1st. Matt Bradley, NBC News, Rome.
Meanwhile, in France, the country's famous food and wine producers are really starting to feel the pain. Helena Humphrey looks at what it's going to take to save the French way of life.
France might be a country under lockdown, but still, some things are sacred. Good cheese, fine wine, freshly baked bread. With restaurants closed, customers come to this butcher's for their comfort food and another precious commodity, company.
Très coupé du monde, ils nous remercient d'être là pour eux, qu'on leur apporte des bons produits, et voilà, et puis le dialogue.
And here in France, no steak is served without a little wine. And stuck inside, people are drinking more. Small independent vendors like this wine shop have recently been allowed to reopen. In this tight community in the heart of Paris, which locals fondly call the village, wine seller Raymond Yves was overwhelmed by the reception he received when he got back to work.
J'ai décidé de rouvrir la boutique et tous les clients à moi étaient tellement contents de me revoir. Ils m'ont même applaudi comme les infirmières. J'étais même étonné.
The warm welcome hasn't eased his worries about the future though.
Espérons qu'ils seront encore là, mais j'ai peur pour beaucoup d'indépendants qui ne vont pas déposer le bilan. C'est surtout ça que j'ai peur. Et dans le monde entier, parce que c'est pas que en France, je crois.
A short walk away, this bakery is already feeling the knock-on effects of lockdown. Parisians who can have swapped the confines of the city for the country. This baker's profits have plunged by 80%. He's had to make some painful decisions.
On a dû se séparer de 7 personnes. Et là, maintenant, on n'est plus qu'à 3, mais bon, voilà, c'est bizarre, c'est tout vide.
These street cafes usually would be overflowing with locals and tourists alike. After all, this is the very square where American writer Ernest Hemingway would come to sip his coffee or his wine when he lived here in the 1920s. Under lockdown, of course, these street cafes, but the question is, what happens next? With France is now a country alike. After all, this is the very entered into recession. The country's just posted its worst economic quarter since 1945, when Europe had been ravaged by 6 years of war. Just down the street, the devastating economic impact of coronavirus is already plain to see. The Church of Saint-Médard has set up a food bank during the pandemic. The lunchtime queue for one of these blue bags, humbly filled with bread, yogurt, fruit and water, grows longer by the minute. Some of those lining up are people the parish priest says he never expected to meet.
Et ce qu'il y a de particulier là dans cette distribution, c'est que des gens arrivent qui ont des logements, mais économiquement ils passent entre les mailles, ils n'ont pas d'aide et donc du coup ils n'arrivent plus à se nourrir.
Here in Paris, the fight is on to save a cherished way of life. But it's more than that. It's a fight to ensure no one goes without the bread that keeps this country and its
of the age of 12. Businesses are allowed to reopen, but working from home is still the norm wherever possible. I'm walking down what is normally a busy shopping street, but most shops are still closed, that you can see behind me. They won't be opening until next week, but there are a few exceptions. There's a line forming there across the street, if you can see. Fabric and craft stores are allowed to open today. The idea is for people to be able to get material to make their own masks. I spoke to the shopkeeper earlier, and she said indeed majority of the people who came in today wanted fabric and elastics to make their own masks, so much so that some had to walk away empty-handed.
She just told me that they are ripped out of stock. They've run out of stock in all of their shops. So there's no point in me going to another shop of Veritas. So I just have to make do with whatever I've got, which right now is rubber bands.
Starting today, people are allowed to go for walks or exercise outdoors with 2 other people who don't belong to the same household, but they must always be the same 2 people. So Belgians will have to think carefully and choose their friends wisely, and it's unclear how this exactly is going to be monitored. Now, in the past 24 hours, 77 hospital admissions with COVID-19 have been recorded. They're trying to keep this number to below 200, because if that changes, the government says they're ready to make a U-turn. Tessa Arcilia, NBC News, Brussels.
A few weeks ago, letting the public into a Monet exhibition would have been unthinkable. But last week, a German gallery tried it, and Carl Nassmann was there to watch the opening.
After several weeks of lockdown, people here in Germany can finally enjoy this. Even as many countries in Europe are struggling to reopen basic necessities, Germany has begun to reopen its museums, and this is the first major exhibition to do so. Lots of safety measures in place pre-lockdown. Thousands of people were coming to see these Monets. Now there's an 800-person limit per day, and you can't limited to just 2 hours inside the museum. There's also a special pathway that winds its way through the entire museum with arrows and shows people with dots on the floor exactly where they can stand to admire the art, but still maintain their social distance. Take the risk, even if it's small, to go ahead and reopen museums. Well, for many here, this is a much-needed break from lockdown.
It's sort of a corona relief today, I think, to be able to look at these bright and beautiful pictures. You can travel to the south of France, to Italy, because Monet was in Venice, and we have all the great pictures of London. So I think it's really important to have this show open in that specific moment.
Museums are really struggling right now. Just in the United States, overall, losing an estimated $33 million per day. Now, here at the Barberini Museum near Berlin, they say they're in touch with other museums around the world about exactly how they're implementing health and safety measures. So this could be a model for how to get people out of their homes and enjoying some art one day soon.
Hello, my name is Elise and I'm 7 years old.
Coming up,
If professional football games are allowed to start again, then why can't ours?
kids asking the tough questions.
This is a great question, Max. I think a lot of us want to get back to our regular activities.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Expect to see more cases across the United States.
It's news made for your streaming world. Live weekdays starting at 6 a.m. Eastern.
If it's asking the tough questions.
Would you prefer a 14-day national shutdown?
If it's asking for accountability.
Respirators and ventilators. Has the federal government stepped up enough?
If it's navigating the new normal in America. And if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
This country was forged in part by shared sacrifice, and once again, we're called to step up. We hope you'll continue to stay informed and stay engaged as we follow this journey together. I'm Lester Holt, and for all my colleagues at NBC News, take care.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Expect to see more cases across the United States.
It's news made for your streaming world. Live weekdays starting at 6 a.m. Eastern.
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, covering coronavirus with facts over fear.
Let's talk about ventilators. What should we be conscious of? Walk me through what the symptoms look like.
At a time.
So, it spreads from humans to tigers. And like we saw in the Bronx Zoo, 5 tigers and 3 lions were infected, and it was through an asymptomatic staff member. But, zoos across the nation have been taking action. For instance, I spoke to Dr. Randy Youngie from the Columbus Zoo in Ohio, who told me that, his team has been taking protective measures. Their staff is wearing masks and gloves and maintaining 6-foot distance with the animals.
So, that's a zoo with a lot of regulation, but what is the risk for tigers living in unregulated zoos?
I've been in touch with unregulated zoos and sanctuaries across the nation. I spoke to one woman in particular, Lori Karen, in Florida, who has 100 animals in her sanctuary. And her biggest concern is that she's running out of supplies for her staff members. They simply do not have enough masks and gloves for her workers.
Yeah, we're hearing about PPE shortages all over the place, aren't we? I know that you spoke to Tiger King staffer Saf Safari. So what did he tell you about protecting these big cats?
Well, Saf has worked extensively with these unregulated zoos and sanctuaries, and his biggest concern is that because of these cramped conditions that the tigers live in, there could be an outbreak, especially if unregulated workers don't have proper PPE and equipment. His biggest concern is that because of these cramped conditions that the tigers live in, there could
A big part
be
of the
an outbreak.
coronavirus pandemic has been its impact on religious communities. Now, here in New York, comments made by Mayor Bill de Blasio have incensed members of the Jewish community. I spoke to Rabbi Shmuley Boteich to find out why.
Let me be clear that Mayor de Blasio did not apologize. He intentionally said that he would not retract what he said. He rather made a clarification, as it were. What he said was utterly unacceptable, and it feeds into horrible traditional Jewish stereotypes of Jews as disease carriers. This is not about Jews or blacks or Latinos or Caucasian or Anglo-Saxons violating norms. This is about communities, New Yorkers, New Jerseyite, Californians, who are not practicing social distancing, and by all means, enforce it with the most respect. Understand that it's not easy for people to give up their freedoms. They're not criminals or taking a walk down the street, but you need to enforce it. But the language of saying, I'm speaking to you, the Jewish community, that's going to be used by a lot of people who are not like Mayor de Blasio, who's a friend of the Jewish community. That's going to be abused by many enemies of the Jewish community to say, oh, you see, these Jews don't care.
Now, the latest US unemployment numbers are out and they make for terrifying reading. I asked financial historian Adam Tooze to put the crisis into context.
As bad as we imagined 2008 to have been, it pales completely by comparison with this. We've had 7 weeks running of more than 3 million Americans signing on for unemployment benefit. This is a shock of the type that America, in fact, no society has ever really, I think, experienced. The savagery of this sudden stop. In the 1930s, in due course, the unemployed numbers do pile up, but it takes years to get to the record of 25%. We're hurtling towards 20% in a single season, basically between March and the summer. We could hit, we've already surpassed the highest record set since World War II.
Could you have imagined seeing these kind of numbers in your lifetime?
No one ever has. In the economics profession, there's actually a live discussion about whether we're going to have to excise them from the statistical record because they will mess with every conceivable effort at modeling. They're rectangular. They scream out in a way that just is completely bamboozling. We don't have any map for understanding what happens next.
During the week, I've had some incredible conversations on our Global Hangout show, but one moment really stood out to me when we asked our youngest viewers to put their tough questions to the experts. First of all, we have Noah, who is 7 years old from Michigan, USA. Let's take a listen to what Noah had to ask you.
My question is, how did the coronavirus get so big?
Yeah, Angie, how did the coronavirus get so big?
Well, I wish I could tell Noah that I had a great answer for that, but unfortunately, I don't know. We do know a couple things about this virus. It's transmitted very efficiently from person to person. So that means that it can spread more quickly. We don't really know why that is or how it even emerged into people in the first place, but those are all questions that we're working on. So thank Noah for asking a fantastic question.
All right, the next question we have is from Elise in London. Let's take a listen to what Elise had to ask.
Noah
I've
for
got two
asking a fantastic
questions to ask. And my first one is, how do viruses spread? And my second one is, what exactly is coronavirus? Thank you.
So 2 great questions from Elise there. Angie or Alan, which one of you want to field that one?
Go ahead, Alan.
No, I'll field the second one. You field the first one.
Okay, so how do viruses spread? Well, viruses, there are a lot of different kinds of viruses, Elise, first of all. But this virus, the coronavirus, spreads, we think, by what we call respiratory droplets. So the little balls of spit that form when you talk or cough or sneeze. The virus is in those. And when you get those little droplets in your nose or in your mouth, that's how the virus can be transmitted from one person to another.
The next question we have is from Max in Hertfordshire. He's 10 years old. Let's take a listen to what Max had to say.
If professional football games are allowed to start again, then why can't ours start again?
So Alison, yeah, if professional football games are allowed to start up again, why can't Max's?
This is a great question, Max. I think a lot of us want to get back to our regular activities, and every country and every region is trying to make up rules that make sense so that the virus doesn't spread the way Angie just told us it does. So, we don't want groups of kids, we don't really want groups of adults doing activities together where a lot of those respiratory droplets might spread. So for now, we've decided that the professional folks can play and play safely, but we really want to keep kids safe. And so for now, no football.
Coming up, driven off the streets by COVID-19, Hong Kong activists have found a new place for protest: video games.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Expect to see more cases across the United States.
It's news made for your streaming world. Live weekdays starting at 6 a.m. Eastern.
If it's asking the tough questions,
would you prefer a 14-day national shutdown?
if it's asking for accountability, respirators and ventilators, has the federal government stepped up enough? If it's navigating the new normal in America, and if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
This country was forged in part by shared sacrifice, and once again, we're called to step up. We hope you'll continue to stay informed and stay engaged as we follow this journey together. I'm Lester Holt, and for all my colleagues at NBC News, take care.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Expect to see more cases across the United States.
It's news made for your streaming world. Live weekdays starting at 6 a.m. Eastern.
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, covering coronavirus with facts over fear.
Let's talk about ventilators. What should we be conscious of? Walk me through what the symptoms look like.
At a time of crisis, turn to the most trusted TV news anchor in America.
Welcome back. Now, Brazil is emerging as a new corona